Hey, welcome back to another episode of On the Brink, in which I, again, will not talk about any current war. I'm not going to talk about killer storms. I'm not even going to talk about the looming end of democracy, though I am worried about that. I am talking instead with Ric Orlando. This should be fun. Ric is with me atop of a balcony overlooking the Ionian Sea in Taormina, Sicily. Ric, it's not exactly that I want to be him when I grow up, but he has truly discovered the secret of leading a good life. He describes himself the best, I think, on your Facebook page. He says, quote, "I am a chef, tour host, writer, musician, hot sauce creator, spice blend maestro, and a professional eater."
Oh, I left Wise Guy out.
You did.
Used to be on there, Wise Guy, and people thought it was Mafia, so I took it off. Not that kind of wise guy.
As you're getting a hint already, he's smart and funny. And he's going to tell us about some weird food stories and talk a little bit about the politics of food. So I have to begin with cannoli. You're in here in Sicily. The number one food, most famous for is cannoli. And I am shocked to hear that it's a phallic symbol.
Well, a lot of the baked goods from Sicily and a lot of Italy came from cloistered nuns because they were in charge of the bakeries for the communities. There wasn't a lot of ovens. They're talking 1600s, 1700s, 1500s. There's usually a community oven. And often the rectories, the church, or the cloisters, cloistered. We're talking about cloistered here now. And yeah, there are some stories that the shape of the cannolo symbolizes the phallus.
I never noticed it, although I've eaten many cannolis, until I read this, and it's a little disturbing. Cannoli is the plural.
Cannolo. So Italian O is a masculine word, and it's an O, and the plural would be I.
Well, my saying I eat cannoli then is extremely accurate.
You eat one cannoli.
No, I eat many.
Cannoli.
Yeah.
The cannolo. But if you ask for a cannolo in America, they have no idea what you're talking about.
No, they don't.
Just to go with it, you're in America. You know what? We've Americanized everything. Yeah. So the cannoli is the cloistered nuns. A lot of the stories about the nunnery and we're talking about until before World War II. But really, after World War I, things started to change. They were loaded. They were powerhouses. Life was very different. People were poor. And when you married your daughter off, because you married them off, it wasn't like you picked a husband. Everything was arranged.
They were a drain on the household wealth.
They were a drain on the household wealth, and you had to provide some kind of dowry. So most families had a lot of kids. If they were lucky, they had 7 sons and 1 daughter, but most didn't. It was the law of averages, about 50-50. So if you end up with a beautiful young daughter and there's a wealthy 70-year-old farmer that needs a wife, or it could be a prince, or it could be a whatever. But you found a good person to marry your daughter off to. You had to come up with some kind of dowry to make it worth it. I have to sneeze. Do you want to pause it?
It'll cut out. Okay. We'll cut it out.
I think when I wiped myself with those napkins, I inhaled all the lint. It's okay. It went away. So it was very common for families to have to make a decision to send their daughters somewhere. And 90% of the time, it was, you're a nun. You're the ugly daughter. You have the club foot. You're the third daughter.
Go be with God.
You know what? It was like, actually, it was a secure existence. You were fed. You had a bed. You didn't worry about starvation. You didn't worry about, poverty. I mean, yes, it was a very austere life, but you were fed. You survived. And then on the other side of the coin, there were a lot of prostitutes, women of ill repute, who were given options of jail time or going into the cloisters. And many chose the cloisters. So there's bad influences on the good girls and good influence on the bad girls. And they weren't always good. And there were ways that they had to, and this is all stuff that I've read and learned from other guides here and actual people who've been here quite a while and know these stories better than I do. For instance, when we go to the cloisters in Palermo on our tour, it's right in the city. It's a famous bakery now. I think there's 1 nun left, but it's all secular. But they said there's a famous fountain called the Fountain of Shame, which are these really pretty raucous nudes of bearded, muscular men looking out of the corner of their eye at young, naked women. There's a whole circle. There's probably 12 or 15 statues, and it's pretty lusty. Lusty is the word. And of course, at the time, whoever, I'm not sure who the king of Palermo was, that area of Sicily was, but they decided to put this statue right outside the cloisters. And that's why it's called the Fountain of Shame.
Shame.
Yeah. And
yet the nuns were inside making penis-shaped goodies.
Among other things, yes.
Yeah.
They have a little courtyard with a fountain, and the nuns had to take their shower once a week in the fountain in front of all the other nuns, because that way there was no possibility of them masturbating or touching themselves in the shower. They were watched at all times. Different life. So coming up with a cannoli, possibly influenced by the women of ill repute who actually knew what they looked like, although I'm sure plenty of the daughters had little brothers, and they obviously knew what genitalia looked like, is a common story of where the cannoli came from. Cannoli.
That's very interesting. There's another sexually charged food story that you tell, and that is about Saint Agatha. She's the patron saint of a big city in Sicily. Catania in Sicily. She's
also the patron saint of breast cancer.
Yeah.
And also is followed and admired by women who have been subjects of abuse. Any woman,
right.
They pray to Saint Agatha.
Right.
And the biggest...
The goddess of domestic violence.
Yeah, pretty much among them. And of all of the religious festivals in Italy, the Feast of Saint Agatha is absolutely one of the biggest.
It's huge.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of people come. And so you heard the story today. I'll tell the story. She was a beautiful young woman who was approached by a Roman viceroy or whatever they called them back then. And she dedicated herself to God. And he wouldn't have it. And he tried. She said no. And they beat her, and she said no. And they locked her in jail, and she said no, with God. And finally, in frustration, he had both of her breasts ripped off with lips.
Oh.
And whether St. Peter saved her or not, there's different stories about that. But the ultimate story is, in celebration of St. Agatha, they developed a beautiful dome-shaped pearl white cookie with a small red pearl of fruit on top, like a little nipple. And it's called Mini di Agata, which means the breasts of Agatha. And you eat them. And they're in every bakery you go to.
Yeah, I have seen them. Yeah. Actually, I did not know this history.
Yeah, Mini di Agata. And we were talking, for those of you who haven't been on my tour, we talk about a lot of weird stuff. But why is it that so many, especially Catholic rituals, involve eating what you're worshiping? It starts with communion. Body of Christ. Drink his blood, eat his flesh. Lamb of God. There's so many.
It's true. Consuming, like taking over the body of your friend or enemy. I'm not quite sure, getting power that way.
It is an interesting thing, whether it's power or whether it's absorbing their power.
We're speaking with Ric Orlando, who is an Anthony-Bourdain-like chef and tour guide. It's very interesting to be talking about food in a country that's full of amazing food. And you see it differently, though, than just a chef. You see the politics behind it. So I'm going to ask you about some of the things I know come up on your tours. One of them is monocropping. You go to a winery where there are 70 different types of varieties of grapes that are grown.
And trees. And olive trees.
Rose bushes in the middle of the winery, because that's an indication of any fungus coming.
And it's also a smart way to farm. A traditional way.
That's why I want you to talk about this. Okay. And you do not see that kind of a winery or farm in the United States. It's all monocrop.
Well, you do on a smaller level, for sure. A lot of the small farmers and the organic farmers and the hip modern farmers understand this. They understand crop rotation, and they understand crop diversity is a way to prevent infections, fungus, things that could destroy an entire crop. But we do just the opposite. Our whole agricultural model in the U.S. is based, like a lot of our other stuff, is based on supporting Monsanto and Dow and Cargill and these big chemical companies that say, don't worry, if that fungus happens, we do a little genetic modification and we come up with this spray, and then it happens again, and before you know it, we have frankenfood. And it's an armchair stuff, but I truly believe that one of the reasons why Americans are fat and ill, and why we don't, as the richest country in the world, why we don't live as long as like Sicily or Sardinia. These people live 10% longer than we do,
Right.
and have much, I'm not going to say lower level, but much less intrusive medical. We were just talking about at dinner how medical is very different here, because they're eating real products that are grown in the right way. So when they farm, I mean, wheat is one thing. Wheat just grows everywhere here. When we drive across the country, you will see it's mostly cut by now, but all the wheat fields. But it's not like the U.S. has different types of wheat, and they're all ancient grains. There's tumania, there's pershittaki, there's ruscello. They're all variations on spelt and farro, like the ancient forms of wheat. But there's nowhere where they grow all one kind of wheat. They say ancient grains. They don't say ancient grain bread. They say grani antichi. Grani is grains. And like even the pasta that I import, it says this pasta contains 3 different types of wheat. And it's never been modified. It's never been fungicided, and it's never been rounded up, because most of our wheat is rounded up. So that whole model of agriculture, Sicily is pretty strict in their agricultural regulations, because they are and have been traditionally throughout their entire history, 5,000 years, an agricultural economy.
So the EU, of course, imports and uses lots of Sicilian products, not too many American.
The EU does import a lot of American products. They import plenty, but there's a lot of things they don't import. Meat.
Yeah.
Some countries import wheat. One of the reasons I believe was behind Brexit was to get American products into the English market, because English is what? English is the mother home of investment banking, right? They invented investment banking. And there's a lot of money tied up in the EU not buying our products. I heard Donald Trump say during the debate, I said, we're talking about NATO, we're going to get Europe to take our products. You know, it's like, they don't want chickens fed on genetically modified soybeans. They don't want beef. They import beef from Argentina, New Zealand, Australia here, as well as their own. They don't want it because they are, first of all, it's a drain on the economy. And when I say drain on the economy, our method of making food is as cheap as it can be. It's all about profiteering across the board. And I don't resent anybody making a profit. I understand that. I have a business. I have to make a living. But if my profiteering is damaging other people, I don't like that. That's not how we don't have to be that way. So we have a model based on profiteering, and it shows because we'll do everything we can to benefit the conglomerate owner of the product, not the end user. The European Union in general, in my opinion, because it comes out of World War II, this democratic socialism, there's a general sensibility, and it's being chipped away at on all sides, but a general sensibility of we do things for the greater good. In America, we do things for the greater profit. We do things, as long as Wall Street goes up, everyone else can go take a flying hoop.
Right. Make as much money as you can as fast as
It's all
possible.
about that. That's our sign of success.
Right.
It annoys me. I understand why they do it, but it annoys me when the Democrats and Harris are saying, and look at the stock market. Well, at what cost, right? As opposed to how healthy are our people? How content are our people? How is our healthcare system not overburdened? America's healthcare system is buried. And a lot of it is because of the way we eat, the way we live. And a lot of this started during Reagan. During Reagan, there was a big breakdown in the way our agricultural subsidies work. It all changed, late 70s, early 80s. And companies were paid to monocrop. Small farmers were destroyed. They were taking money away and giving it. And those companies, not only were they paid to monocrop, but they were forced to buy from Monsanto, DuPont, Dow, Cargill, certain chemicals, certain fertilizers. And we've created a system. It's very Philip K. Dick to me. It's very Harlan Ellison. It's this futuristic thing that people don't understand. Oh, we have more soybeans than anybody. But do you want to walk in that soybean field barefoot? No. You know, it's like the potatoes that McDonald's grows. The people who harvest it have to wear full body gas suits to be in the dirt. We're not talking to be in a machine. They're literally harvesting potatoes, and the dust in the soil, you cannot breathe.
Yeah.
So, and why? Because the potatoes grow bigger, they grow faster, and they don't have black rotten spots.
We also have fruit in America 12 months a year. You can get pears in the United States in December. Sicily, you're apt to ask for something. I'll say, no, that's not in season now.
Non stagione. Non stagione. What's the matter you? Non stagione. No, they non mangia pera in January. Ah. I mean, they import through the EU. There is an importation system. You will find bananas year round, for sure. But I don't know if you noticed when we went out for seafood last night, we got lemons, which are fish. And what color were those lemons?
Oh, yeah, they were green.
They were green. And everyone thought they were limes, but it's, you know, the lemon season is really not for another couple months, but you want lemons. Obviously, they make frozen products. We had frozen blood orange juice. It was delicious, which I'm a big believer in frozen food. I think frozen food is one of the cleanest ways to preserve your harvest and maintain the majority of the nutrients and the flavor. Just freeze it, right? People look down on frozen food, and that's, and I'm going to divert myself. As a chef, I've been doing it since 1982. So I've watched this whole evolution of how what we eat and what we buy has changed. And one of the things that blows me away is the beginning of Flying Foods. It was like 1982, 1983. There was a company called Flying Foods. And they would bring farm-raised food from Peru, Israel, and New Zealand to the Boston market when I was working in Boston. We had to actually go to Logan Airport, and they would set up a kiosk, and the restaurants would buy, oh my God, you know, I'm getting artichokes when it's not artichoke season. Yeah. I grew up, you cooked in season, just like here. Went in the supermarket in the 60s and 70s, there was cellophane tomatoes, cabbage, root vegetables.
Right.
But you didn't see arugula all year. You didn't see arugula at all. But, you know, you didn't see half this stuff all year. And now I've worked with a couple of the supermarket groups in different types of philanthropic stuff, but I've worked and heard their messaging, and their messaging is always the same. Fresh, 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 fresh. And they don't say fresh at any cost. They say fresh. And, you know, fresh is a word. It makes us feel good. Oh, it's fresh. That'd be good. It's fresh. Fresh from, you know, Peru in January. Fresh from, you know, New Zealand in February. I'm not against importation of food, but to have a system where every supermarket not only has everything, but has to have everything filled to almost like a grotesquely abundant level. It's wasteful.
It is wasteful.
What, over 50% of the fruit that goes into a supermarket ends up in the garbage or donated. Now we finally got some donation projects, but, you know, and it's almost, somebody once told me that artichokes are a cartel. And I said, what do you mean artichokes are a cartel? Castroville artichokes are like distributed by one company, basically. And their deal is, you want them in artichoke season, you got to buy them all year. When I originally approached a particular supermarket chain, back when I did my PBS series, which was 2003, about kind of doing my version of a good housekeeping seal of approval on things you should be eating to be healthy and fresh and not only help the economy, but also help the ecosystem. They said, we can't do that. We can only buy so much local product because we have to buy X amount of product from these distributors who will bring, say, tomatoes in from California, and as that season ends, Arizona, then Texas, then Florida, then Mexico, then Guatemala, then Peru and Chile. But you make a contract. If you want those tomatoes, you have to buy them, and they'll get them year round. So he said, so we can't stock that many more local things. Yeah. They have little local, you know, you go in I'm not mentioning any supermarket chains because they're all my friends and they all sell my products, but their management on the top end and their buying philosophy is a whole different thing. And they have no choice. They can't just say, hey, why are we going to buy California tomatoes in August when all these farms around here have tomatoes? If they bought from all the farms here, it would change our local economy.
Right.
It would open up more opportunities for farming. But then the distributors, well, then you're not going to get them in the winter when everybody wants them. And one of the things that drives me up a wall is how many well-meaning, Prius driving, lovely people don't think twice about the groceries they buy. They think if it's organic, but they don't. That's not what you should be thinking about. You should be thinking about what you're buying, when you're buying it. And in Italy, it's
Yeah.
a religion.
It's a religion. You're
It's
right.
a religion.
Right.
Can I make a zucchini dish in October? No, what's wrong with you? No zucchini, it's pumpkin time, or whatever it is,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And as a chef, as a cook, that used to make me excited. We waited for strawberries, waited for those local strawberries. And then before you know it, there was these red on the outside and white on the inside strawberries all year, and places buy them.
Yeah.
And I still give other chefs a joshingly poke in the ribs sometimes. When I go in their restaurant, I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool that you're serving asparagus in November.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like, I try to remind them, you have the responsibility.
Stick to.
Yeah, I mean, when I
Stick
was
to the principle.
I was involved with the Chefs Collaborative for a long time. That became the Chefs Collaborative 2000, and then it kind of faded into some other groups. But that was Alice Waters was involved with that.
Right.
And we were really trying to be leaders in the marketing to America of what to eat when. And I would never, I mean, I'm so altruistic. I could have made so much more money if I was just a crook, but I'm altruistic. And you want a filet mignon with asparagus. People, I'm having a big party for Christmas. I want filet mignon and asparagus. I said, well, I can get the meat, but I get
Asparagus.
now, but people think that's the way they're supposed to be.
It's
in the store. Why can't you get it? I can get it. I just don't think you should eat it. And then I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
And I'm like some kind of hippie. I remember one time, you'll love this. I went to testify at a Department of Ag thing. This is when I had a long hair and ponytails, so the late 90s, right? And I was doing a lot of work at WHT at the time and starting to get a little reputation. And I walked up the aisle from my seat to speak, and I heard one person, a legislator, assembly person, lobbyist, I don't know who it was, but it was that type of crowd say, oh, there's that guy with the ponytail from Woodstock. And I realized I was invalidated at that point.
That's it.
I went home and cut my hair.
Oh my gosh.
Because I didn't want people to judge my politics on a ponytail.
Based on appearance. But let me switch to meat though, too. You just brought up meat. You could get the steak. How come veal is cool in Italy and not in the United States? They don't care about animals? They're not animal lovers in Italy?
Well, there's a couple of reasons, layers of reasons. Italy is a great cheese producing nation. Lots of cheese, mozzarella. How much mozzarella do we eat in America, let alone in Italy? Not just the beautiful fresh, but pizza cheese. God, gazillions of tons of cheese, right? And Italy produces a lot of it. Although Wisconsin produces a lot more of it now. Most of the cheese you get on pizza is American, and that's why it doesn't taste right. Ricotta.
But that's another story.
That's a whole other story. And, corn-fed cheese versus grass-fed cheese, a whole different animal. But what are we talking about? Oh, yeah.
Veal.
Yeah. So what I tell people this, first of all, we have a lot of people our age who are baby boomers. We have a lot of food politics beliefs that are based in a reactionary time in the 70s, which is fine. But we're finding out a lot of it was wrong. Eggs are good for you. Butter is good for you. Margarine is bad for you. Undercooking your vegetables is good roughage, but it's better to cook them a little longer to get more nutrients. These are all things that were thrown out in the 70s. Because just like the millennials who don't want to you see the shaving commercials. This is not my dad's razor. It sure is. It has made it a different color, but it's your razor now. And it's not called this. It's called Cool Guy Razor, whatever. That was my phone. It's good.
Okay.
So I'm distracting myself too much. So,
I'm letting you go because the tangents are pretty funny. We're talking about veal.
Yeah. So
we
see that you can still find the picture. There was a picture that was circulating around. I think it started out maybe in it wasn't Mother Jones, that other little black and white paper, but Mother Jones and all those of a little white baby cow in a dry, muddy field on a post chained to a post, looking very sad, saying, "Don't eat veal." Now, there is a type of veal, the milk-fed veal, that was part of the aristocracy that loved, and the cow was never that big. They loved these little tiny, 3-4 week old baby animals.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly would not have eaten so many of them to create a threat to creating cheese. But anyway, the science of animals, most people don't understand it. Most males, even humans, I guess, kill each other over women. And that's what they do, right? And they fight to the death to get the one they want. And a
We're
man.
back to sex and food now.
No, we're not talking about sex, but we're talking about science
All
and
right,
creation. We're talking about creation.
Here we are. Okay.
And the male instinct is to be the bull of the herd, and that plant your seed and continue your gene. That goes all the way back to the beginning of our DNA, and we'll talk about that in a whole other show because I got one for you. But bulls, if anyone farms, and most people who farms agree with me on this, you can't have two fully mature male cows within proximity of each other unless you have so many cows that they can divide up the herd, right? So if you like cheese, you got to have knocked up cows making milk. Who's going to knock them up? Bulls. You have too many bulls. I mean, you can't program, sooner or later they will, but right now you can't program cows to have just girls. You need about 1,000 girls to every 10 males in order to have a good cheese. Well, maybe not that many, but a good 20, 30 to 1 to have a good, it's good being a bull. I understand. But anyway, you can cut that out.
Do not cut that
out. That was too easy. So the bulls, when they reach a certain age, are castrated. So they don't do that. And many of them are slaughtered at that age. So they're not full 2, 3, 4-year-old milk cows like we eat in the U.S. a lot. They're younger, a little lighter colored, and technically, as our guy said today, it's not really veal. But in America, you would kind of consider that veal. It's not
young beef.
It's not white, but it's rosier.
Almost like a pork.
Yeah, and they don't eat a ton of it. It's not like in the U.S. where people eat hamburgers every day. Sadly, you are seeing more and more hamburgers in the cities because the young kids are growing up with Instagram and they're being influenced, and burger bars are happening everywhere. But even the meat they use is this meat. And so the cows that are raised in Sicily, mostly in the South, in Tuscany, they're outside. There's not a lot of winter here. And they eat grass and they eat hay. And they're not being fed GMO corn and soybeans. You know why? They don't have GMO corn and soybeans. You know why? Because they don't buy from America. Another thing that we're angry that we can't get into their market. I mean, when I listen to Donald Trump talk about NATO and all his derogatory remarks towards the EU, you know that there's people in his ear saying, those goddamn socialists, they're the enemy. We need to get them on board with us. We probably sell more meat we definitely sell more meat to China than here, because they don't care what they eat. We ship our chickens to China to get bleached and butchered and sent back. I mean, like for fast food and all that stuff. It's really amazing what we do. The more you learn about what we do, the more obvious it is that the European Union is the best place and the odd man out. South America also, but in South America, what happens? Really easy. You start a revolution, you throw the democratic elected guy out, you put a dictator in.
Right.
And
no, I lived for a long time in Bosnia, and the food was amazing there for much the same reason. It was so poor, so out of everything, that they had gone back to family farming.
Yeah.
So it's all fresh meat, all fresh produce. You ate in season. It's exactly like what you're describing. It's the good thing, not
pumpkin and cabbage.
Pumpkin and cabbage, exactly.
And dark leafy things that can take the snow. Yeah.
We're talking with chef and tour director Ric Orlando about the politics of food. And it occurs to me that I should ask you for your definition. What do you mean when you're talking about politics of food? We're kind of combining what should be happening in tradition and history. What do you mean when you say the politics of food?
Well, I mean, a lot of people call themselves food activists, and I understand that. But I'm a little more independent, I think, of a lot of the food activists. A lot of food activists get on one, like anything else. They become ideologues, vegan or die. They're very, they're not open to understanding, in my opinion, the way the world works. That's why I like Slow Food. Slow Food is an organization that is about preserving the traditional methods of growing food, cooking food, and eating food. In the U.S., it's starting to steer away. It's starting to become a little more ideologue. It's more about representing every culture that's in the country, and I'm all for that. But in Europe, Slow Food is really about preserving traditional food, growing preparing and eating. And that whole sensibility is something that goes really contrary to the American way of growing, preparing, and eating.
And
We
eating food, yeah.
grow food really fast, cook it really fast, eat it in our fryer, in a microwave, and eat it in our car. Which is, you talk about like, the polar opposite of what slow food is all about, right? So to me, is that food politics or is it food philosophy?
Yeah.
Where do they intersect? I don't know, but I know that for me, if I were the king of the world, I would, especially in the U.S., I would change the way we do things, and and you know what? I think, honestly, bro, I think it's too far gone in the U.S.
Yeah, one of my questions is going to be, can we bring it around? Can we learn from Sicily, which is doing well and well for its people and for its economy?
Well, what's
How can we
fascinating
do
about
that?
these places is they don't make the kind of money we make. The average
They don't
salary is
need it.
$32,000 a year, and yet
Exactly.
they eat food like you were shopping in the
Yeah.
high-end shelf at Whole Food every day.
Yeah,
Organic food is everywhere,
Yeah. It's the
But
norm.
I don't know. I think that what we are seeing, I don't want to say groundswell, but we're seeing a movement of younger people. For every young kid that's lining up at Chick-fil-A, let me change that. For every 100 kids that's lining up at Chick-fil-A, there's one or two that are making better decisions than their parents did. And you may begin to see more of that. Again, the tricky thing that we have to deal with is social media, internet, what I like to call, the permeating misinformation, information that everyone has access
Right.
to, that creates a lot of ideologues that jump on things because they hear one thing. Oh, you know what? Go back to the baby veal. That's like being an ideologue.
Yeah.
I know when a restaurant in Woodstock, a good friend of mine decided to make an ossobuco for their holiday dinner in Woodstock. People stood outside with protesting,
Yeah.
don't eat here.
Yeah.
Because they're serving veal. Meanwhile, they're eating GMO soybeans that, in order to grow them, you have to kill every rodent, every bird,
Right.
every snake, every mouse in the field with, all this spray to grow your soybeans. I mean, 1 million small animals or a couple thousand cows. I don't know. I guess they weigh the same.
Okay, now you're right. That's misinformation spread on the internet, and people get bad ideas. But you also have spoken about the good of the Instagram world, the social media
Yeah.
has globalized food and eating, and
It's done a couple of things. It's globalized food and eating in a lot of ways. It's taught people others' traditions, which is really important. I think, as a matter of fact, there's a woman named Janelle Galloway. I'll send you her link. She's a food writer, and she's got a couple of Facebook groups. One is on food writing, but her posts are really smart because they're just posed as questions. And she posed a question just today, about whether somebody who comes from a wealthy country is opening a business or cooking people from a country who had been oppressed by their country in the past, is that good or bad? It's the appropriation question. And, we all chimed in. I chimed in and I got a little flack, but I gave my opinion on it, and that's fine. I believe that sharing one's culture or sharing another one's culture, like I share the Sicilian culture with Americans. Am I appropriating Sicily? Well, number one, I can get away with it. Hey, I'm Sicilian. But what if when I do it with Spain or New Orleans, or if I do it somewhere else? I'm not appropriating. To use a musician and an old pothead's term, I'm turning you on to something cool.
Yeah.
I'm sharing.
Yes.
And, so I believe those are kind of things that we deal with.
Well, young chefs too are talking to one another online now, and sharing ideas in a way that didn't happen in the past.
Yes, good and bad. There's a lot of sites where they just make fun of each other and are really nasty and slag each other. And there's a lot of sites where they support each other. No, believe me, I'll show you some sites that just all they do is, that sucked. But at the same time, some of the bad things about food, like fast food, like putting aioli on everything, like all these things that are not healthy and are not smart, chefs in places like Sicily coming up, where the older chefs would scoff at it because they're rooted in tradition, are doing it the same way any other new generation does, to stick it to the older generation, And so, you're seeing not a lot, but like in Palermo, there's these street food places and they serve all these traditional historic street foods like pennelle, chickpea fritters, and kazili, potato fritters, and all this fried stuff that they have been making forever. And one store said, and now chicken nuggets.
Oh.
Right? And you know what? It's all kids in line buying them. And it's a
Yep.
novelty to them.
Yep.
You know? Now, a chicken nugget in Sicily is a pretty damn different from a chicken nugget in the US because they're actually using chicken and breading and frying it in non-GMO sunflower oil. But it's still so that, you know, I'm on the fence on that, but I'm too old to fight that battle because, you know, in 10 or 15 years, I won't be cooking anymore. So I'll just keep doing my talking.
Keep talking, yeah, and writing.
So, you know, it's a very food. So what am I into food? Yes, the politics of food are very important to me. On the strictly legislative side, I feel like at times I've thought about getting into more lobbying, but I've looked into it and realized it's useless. I'll be on the minority side with no money. So instead, I try to be a voice. When I was playing music, it was my teens, I began writing music, original music. I didn't want to do covers, I didn't do my own stuff. I was kind of in the New York underground and wasn't playing harsh punk rock, but underground artsy music. I remember reading about John Lennon saying that, you know, a musician with a message could have more impact than like all the politicians in the world. And that's kind of how I feel about my food politics. I'd rather be a pretty well-known popular chef who has an opinion. As a matter of fact, when I did my PBS series, the subtitle was The Deliciously Opinionated Chef. Right? To get my opinion out there.
I think you're also the sexiest chef.
Well, that was Steve Barnes, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah.
No, we played that, but hey, you know.
We are running out of time. We're talking with Ric Orlando, who is a chef and writer and traveler and eater, and really interesting. And we could go on and on, but I do want you to tell us one last story. I've heard you tell this to other travelers, and that is the mystery of why there's no hummus in Sicily, even though just a few miles across the sea, that's
Tunisia.
right out here. Yeah, Tunisia. They eat hummus every day. I lived in Tunisia.
Tunisians eat hummus here. They make hummus here.
I cannot look at hummus. I ate so much of it when I was in Tunis.
And they grow sesame seeds here. And they grow chickpeas here. And they grow garlic here.
You can get za'atar here. So why is there no hummus in Sicily?
Well, it's beginning. It is definitely beginning.
Because we're globalizing.
Well, the younger, you see like these, especially the food shops, the young hip food shops, you're seeing hummus sandwiches and hummus on sandwiches. Can I say that I think it might have been a Catholic reaction? The Spanish ruled Sicily with an iron fist. Not only with an iron fist, it was January 18th, 1493 was the day that if you were Muslim, Islamic, or Jewish, you had three choices: convert, leave, or die. The Spanish Inquisition essentially began in Sicily. I will show you the tree where they burned the people at a park in Sicily. And on a diversion, I'm going over, but you can't shut me up. One of the things I love about Italy and France and a lot of other places, and I really am uncomfortable about in the US, is this: they don't bury history here. They leave it in your face so that you remember it. And instead of taking down statues, they'll change the plaque to say, this jerk, you know, killed 9 billion people, not, oh, take him away. Then you forget about it. And then these right-wing people come along and they don't know. It's not even right. Forget about right-wing. These empty-headed young people don't know who Hitler was. They don't know who Mussolini was. On a quick diversion, you know what drives me nuts? Trumper Italian Americans. Their grandfathers and grandmothers are rolling in their graves. And why? And the same thing with Latin American Trumpers, because both of their families who came from Spain and Italy lived under fascism. They know what it is. They despised it. They hung the guy in a gas station and threw rocks and bottles at his body for days. That's how much they hated him. Boy, I'd like to see
We're talking about Mussolini here.
Yes. That one will get shot. But anyway, I think that a lot of it was the Spanish really doing all they could to keep any influence of the Islamic community.
And hummus was just
part of the Arab community.
The Arabs, and so
Now, there are a lot of other Arab things that are integrated into Spanish food. Lots of it, right? The whole Moorish thing. But I think hummus very specifically, because they grow a lot of beans in Italy.
Yeah, chickpeas are everywhere.
And fagiolini, beans. They make bean soups and even make bean spreads. But the tahini part is not part of it.
Yeah, it had the Arab part.
Right, and they make like pistachio pesto, which is like pistachio tahini. They make almond paste, which is like almond tahini.
Right.
And so I've read that there are a couple of young companies making tahini in southern Italy, or either Sicily or southern Puglia, making hummus and tahini. So it's bound to happen.
Right.
But I think, and that's, armchair Rick, no evidence. That's why Alan didn't want him and AMC. Prove it. I'm thought-provoking. I'm not out here reciting facts.
I think we need to cut that part out.
I did that on purpose. Shut me up. But no, I do believe that there had to be some impact from that.
That makes sense. And we end our show always with a toast. And you're pouring your glass now.
Hold on. This is really important.
Yes.
It's bad luck in Italy to have a toast without any alcohol. If you have a baby and a 3-year-old, and they have a glass of juice, you dip your finger in your wine and you touch their juice.
So that at least there's some.
Otherwise, you get them all.
It's bad luck. Oh, bad eye. Okay. We're having a toast, and this is to food, to what it means and says about us and our culture, to the people who make it, to the poor people who developed a whole lot of the food that we are now
still the backbone of our food system.
Absolutely.
And to the immigrants.
And to the immigrants who bring their food to us, and we should be so grateful.
Bring their food to us and make our food. And grow our food and harvest our food. And even here, the West Africans, the Tunisians and the Bangladeshis, Senegalese who come here and work on the farms and work in the restaurants, because as every generation advances, whether they advance in wealth or advance in culture or advance in their own little pea brains, they want other people to do work for them.
So there's our
so salute to the workers, the food workers, and the food that they make.